Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Out, a labor of love that's in the business world. Startup, growth, crisis, everything you could think of. We're going to take you on this joyride from start to finish. And when you leave, you're going to be so happy in the business world. This is really, like I said, a labor of love. My dear friend Mark Sabbagh, who's a giant in his own space, is now going to tell you a little bit about episode one. So, Mark, you're on.
Labor of love is not the word. There's a lot more to that. Irwin, you've been with me really since the beginning of my career, so this is an honor and a privilege. Somebody I really look up to. Today, we're starting the first episode of Inside Out. We're very excited to talk about we're going to run through a couple of different episodes and talk about what it is to be on the inside of a business from my perspective and what it is to be on the outside of the business from Irwin's perspective. We're going to talk about new school. We're going to talk about old school. On this first episode today, we're going to be talking about, understanding capital, understanding what your needs are, and how to really kind of get your company through those first beginning stages, and what you should know today and what you should know for tomorrow. There's so many crucial points, and this is going to be very exciting, and we look forward to giving you a great show and hope you can benefit a ton from this.
Hi, everybody. Irwin Dayan from Matchpoint Partners, one of the sponsors of the show today, along with Diamond Trading. So, Matchpoint Partners is a firm that advises companies in startup, growth, and crisis. We cover everything from financing to marketing to branding to everything that along the lines of consumer goods and services that are needed out there. We have a team, we have a strategic partner group that really could address issues in all these spaces. We're excited always with challenges, whether they be on the crisis side and the startup and growth side, whether it's capital, whether it's design, anything that would fall in line with taking your company up there where the game. We're very open-minded. We love to talk to people. Please reach out to us regarding any kind of partnerships or advice or anything or events or programs or things that we always get involved in. We love to learn. We love to grow. We're here to listen to your thoughts and get excited about these continuing programs that we'll be offering. Thanks so much.
ID, you're sitting on the outside of a company, right?
Right.
When a company's having problems and they're actually breaking, what is usually the first thing that needs to change?
So I've seen from companies doing 10 million to a billion I've been involved in. And the first thing is always cash control. That's the key thing. Before you're trying to fix anything, cash control is key. When any turnaround guy goes in there, when any company consulting firm goes in there, and I've been like parachuted into tons of these deals, they look at where's the cash position. Stop dreaming and understand where you're going. Now, when you see that, you start to look at the cash control, the fundamental, whether it's service or product or whatever it is, the basic operational procedures. Is there too much fat? What's going on? Who's managing it? How dispersed is it? Who's going through it? So now, in your day to day, I'm asking you now. I'm on the outside looking in. This is inside out. I'm on the outside looking in. How would you rate yourself or your company on your day-to-day management control, your cash control, your operations, your talent? Give me a feedback.
So in terms of cash, I mean, I always think as an investor, right? I always think about what can go bad and what can go good, right?
Right.
But you have to be positioned for both,
Right.
right? So first and foremost, as a company, I believe it's something that's very, very important to me. Okay, and I do this with anybody who I invest in, and I do this with our own businesses. Frugality, crucial, right? The big thing about frugality is that, look, when your company's doing really good, right? You have your times that you're doing great. You got a good customer that you landed. You're flowing. Things are going well, but you can't really. A lot of companies kind of lose sight because they get excited. Oh, okay, now the money's coming in, so now I'm gonna start, either decorating the office more. Oh, I'm gonna do this I'm gonna buy this for myself personally. You get out of
You
control.
get a little fat.
Correct.
Right.
And then you start hiring people that you may not need. You start
Ah,
buying things that you may not need. You start putting, you start putting you see this with a lot of companies. You're going to start putting a bar in the office, and you're going to start doing
right.
the different things that are just the luxuries, right?
Right.
And if you look at some of the greater entrepreneurs, right, and some of the greater businesses, let's look at the Berkshires of the world, right? I mean, if you read the story about Berkshire Hathaway, right, and you're talking about a company at this point that's well over $1 trillion, right? And
Value.
they only have 20 something employees. They're in a standard type of office. They're probably one of the most successful companies and probably the most successful investment companies that ever come around. Frugality is key. And secondly, when it comes to people, the challenges that you can have is that we can manage people, right? But you cannot manage what goes on in their personal life in their day to day.
Right.
So you never know what might happen in their day. Or you never may know what happened to them personally. So you really got to kind of be also, when it comes to having issues with people, if there's a crisis with a person, you really need to know how to be
Right.
somebody that they could turn to, not somebody they can fear.
Right. Uh, so I want to add a little bit to that. I see that also a tool that I've always, implemented and advised people on is that there's a curve. So if you have people out there, SG&A, the selling general and administrative expenses, if you look at that and you model, a lot of companies as they grow keep hiring because we're growing, so we should be hiring. We're growing, so we should be hiring. But now here's the thing. As it grows, if your revenue drops, so many companies, and this is a crisis point, so many companies will grow, and if they start to flatline, they leave that expense there without carving it out, without reducing it. They don't look at that until it's too late. So that's really a key thing. And then there's a major metric that everybody out there should look into.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Sabbagh. I'm the founder and CEO of Diamond Trading Group. We are a trading and distribution company that trades and distributes brand name consumer products across electronics, toys, appliances, hard goods, and major consumer brands. We also are an investment company that is spread across tech, social media, trade and distribution, and services. For more information about what services we can offer, visit Diamond Trading Group at dtgny.com. And for our appliance business, visit www.diamondappliancegroup.com.
There's a thing called revenue per employee, monster. So
Huge.
in certain industries, it could be a couple 100,000 an employee. In the tech industry that we'll be talking about later on in the show, it's the numbers are high. It could be over $1 million a person. In general industries, it could be 100, 200, $300,000 a person. Look at that metric. If you have 100 employees and you're doing, let's say, 100,000 an employee, you're doing 10, 20, 30, 100, look at that, what that's yielding, because that's going to tell you if you're driving the employee and what you're yielding. Maybe it's a management change. Maybe that numbers, all these numbers, any kind of tool with numbers is going to help you sustain your growth and not let you fall into a failure mode, which we'll be talking about later on in the show.
So here's a question also, you know, and this is something that I guess 6 years of having my own business is, when do you slow down versus push harder, and how do you kind of spot that moment? I can get into a bit, but I want you to, you've been around a long time, seen a lot. From when somebody starts a business, right?
Right.
Obviously, in the beginning days of a business, you're all in, right? But when does it come to that time, if ever, where you're able to kind of step back and relinquish control of your whatever you were doing because in the beginning you're wearing all hats,
Right.
you know? So, your CEO comes to you after 5 to 10 years. Should they be in a different position when they were from day one? Is it a problem that they're not?
So it's an incredible question, very broad based. I tell you that I've seen so many companies start as a one person band, and and in today's world, using technology, you could do an incredible growth as a one person band or half a dozen people, so on and so forth. I think that, and this has always been my mantra, human capital gets you there. So it's not like decades ago you're buying into someone to do a job. No, you're buying into someone to add value to that position. And that's really the key. I think that that's the more important picture of your growth. So, and I can tell you this because you hit a button that a lot that I've seen over the last decade, especially with tons of people that I advise, that the model today in business is really, let me build it, let me scale it, and let me sell it. It's not such a long term thing that people want to be in. And then that entrepreneurial spirit, which led me to meet you years ago, is hey, I want to build it, scale it, sell it. And that's the model. It's not where 30, 40 years ago, I want to take a 20, 30, 40-year run on this. I want to build it and scale it and sell it. I want to build it. So that seems to be a model. Why? Because today there's so much capital out there that's willing to buy growing companies. So it's that type of a market. So as far as your question, say, hey, what do you do with people? People are human capital, and the key thing is that, and I've learned this from major consultants I've worked with over the years, monster companies like BDO and Bain Capital and PwC and on and on and on. When your company looks at hiring people as a cost, right? As a cost, they say, "Oh, it's I'm not going to pay this person this much," or "I don't want that." When you look at it a as a resource to grow, that's the way you should be looking at it. And I always take this, and I like to be broad based in my thinking, always expanding my thought process. If you look at certain industries, the music industry, the writing industry, the finance industry, where that idea or that program or that song or whatever that be, a person could write a song in 6 months and never sell a record. But a musical genius that we know in our world, and so many incredible artists in the world, could write a song in 10 minutes, and it'll sell 100 million songs, 100 million records. And I always bring up Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, who wrote songs in an hour that 40, 50 years later are selling, are streaming at 100 million or 200 million songs. God only knows. Well, that happens to be his big song, so I didn't just come out and splurt that out. But what is that capital? So look at hiring people as a resource. Not, you know what, I have to chop six more people. No, you have to get six people that are going to grow your business. So that's my thought on that.
You know, for what I see is that, look, it's I heard the CEO of Uber say this the other day. He said, working hard is one of the best skills you can have, right? So when you're starting a business, obviously there's a lot of sacrifice you got to make in the beginning, and then you got to learn really what it is to manage people. Most entrepreneurs are not born leaders. I mean, it's just what it is. But you have to really push yourself into that role. Also, educate yourself a lot
Right.
to what it's going to take you to be able to get to a point where you can actually start moving things over to those resources, so you could start focusing on the bigger picture. So I've learned that a lot more over my time because I started as one person, right? I mean, it was, I started as one person and I grew from one to the other to the other to the other. And then we have a good, small, condensed team now that handles different areas. And to your point, you're right. Don't look at it as an expense. Look at it as a resource because
Thousand
you
percent.
never know what it's gonna because down the road, and that's how I try to look at people. Also, I try to look at people as lifers when they come to my company, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm thinking for today, but I'm really always thinking for tomorrow.
Right.
You try to always have that cap on. What we've done a fair amount of angel investing, on in our investment business, and we get involved in helping our founders raise money. Um, my question would be: is it risky to raise money too early and versus too late? Is there any bigger risk, and why?
So, to snapshot the answer to that question, I think that a lot of things have to come into play. That number one, you have to be real about what you're raising the capital for. Two, the valuation has to be what I like to call real, not Disney-esque. Not, not thinking,
It can't
you
be
know what?
phantom.
I woke up in the middle of the night with an idea and I want to raise, and I'm putting a $10 billion valuation on it. Why? What do you got? What are you going to show us? So I think with capital, the beautiful thing about capital, there's so much capital today out there. That's not a problem. But what are you offering? So that's key. I think that initially the model is pretty much raising seed capital to launch your item, have proof of concept, make the thing happen, and then at that point you could assign an evaluation that's going to play out. And then once you start to scale, like anything else, you go to kindergarten, then third grade, then high school, then college, then masters. You don't just say, "Hi, I want $1 billion." Although in the tech world today, you could do that, because people are just are insane about what's going on in that world because the growth is just beyond imagination. So I say with capital, be very cautious about what you're trying to raise. Get enough to get the thing off the ground before you start thinking about these insane valuations. And I'll just end on this note. Be concerned about the debt versus equity type of raise,
Of course.
because those will play out. Don't give away the ranch from the outset, because if you go out of the gate, you want to, I want $1 million. Okay, I'll give you the $1 million. We want 99%. No, take the 500,000 or $1 million as debt. Launch your stuff, make some money, then sell your equity piece, and then go on, to greater pastures with money. Be cautious about that. What, and like you said earlier in the previous shows, that be frugal about your money. Just because someone raised $1 million or $1 billion or whatever, don't go crazy with all this spending on nonsense things. Go into really getting your human capital to scale your business and grow. That's what I tell you on that.
What I'm gonna say is also, a part I want to touch here is on from an investor side, right? I'll just say what I think a lot of the big investors in the Valley look at, or any type of sort of investor, but I know what I look at, right, when
Right.
it comes to actually investing
Right.
in a startup. For us, it's really something that really ties back to our core businesses, right, which is distribution and trade,
Right.
and supply chain. But there's also, but primarily that's the type of investments you look for. But what we really look for is the type of founders. Founders are probably the people driving the ship.
Right.
Okay, so granted, they may not have the greatest product up front. They may have an idea, right, that can be, okay, it sounds cool, right? But who's really behind it?
Right.
What are you willing to do to really make this happen?
Right.
How hard are you willing to push this? And what kind of sacrifice are you willing to make
Right.
in order to make this happen?
Right.
Because here's what I'm going to tell you, right? And you'll speak again to founders, you'll speak to investors. They'll all tell you the same thing. 95% of these things are probably not going to work out.
Right.
So why should somebody take a 5% flyer?
Right.
And it all starts with the operator.
Right. Okay.
The guy's got like 15, 20 businesses going on at the same time.
If you look at Europe, if you look at Asia, you look at the US, you look at South America, they really operate in a different model.